Time to get inspired and improve your yoga knowledge in English. You're listening to Your Yoga in English, a podcast for yogis and yoga teachers that speak English as their second or third language and want to practice or teach yoga worldwide. I'm Annie, the founder of Enga Unite, and here to guide you on the way to become the confident and knowledgeable English-speaking yogi you want to be. Hello! I'm very excited to be here today because today we're going to speak about yin yoga. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really excited to see you.
Yeah, me too. It's our first time, right?
Exactly. I've seen you a lot online, but not really face to face yet.
Yeah, me too. I've also seen you a lot online, and you're so busy and you're doing such a wonderful job. So thank you very much for inviting me for today.
Oh, no, it's a real pleasure. I really admire what you do too, and I think it's really inspiring for me as a yoga teacher, but for many yogis as well. But I was actually not sure about how to pronounce your name.
Okay. Well, that's it always creates a little bit of I think ever since I was born, really, because basically my parents were expecting a boy and a girl came along, and there was a German nurse who had my name, and so they said, okay, let me give her this name. The correct pronunciation is Annchen because it's a German name, but I just say Annchen. And of course, in Spain, it's quite difficult for many people. So I usually end up being Annie or, like you. Or Angie sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. That's so interesting. I thought it was German, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So it's Annchen.
Annchen, if you want to be linguistically correct, should we say? But even with the Germans, I've discovered that it's actually not a very common name. It does mean Annie. It means small Anne, but it's not actually used very much even among the Germans. So it's a bit of an outdated name. Maybe for children, for little kids, they'll say Annchen, but otherwise not.
I see. Yeah. How interesting. I'm always fascinated when it comes to languages.
Yeah.
So I already said that you're a yin yoga teacher and you are doing incredible work. From what I see, you're also very active. And you said you live in Spain. Could you tell us a little bit more about who you are, where you are based, and maybe your experience with learning languages?
Right. Okay. So I'm Annchen and I'm based in Granada, Spain. We've been here for 5 years, but basically I've been living on and off in Spain for about 20 years. Overall, I would say probably about 15 years in Spain, between living in North Africa and the Middle East. And in terms of my experience with languages, well, I come from South Africa. In South Africa, by the time I'd finished school, we learned Afrikaans and German at school, and then when I finished, I learned French and Xhosa, which is a language, an African language that they speak there. And so when I arrived in Spain, I arrived in Barcelona, and it was quite easy to pick up Catalan and Spanish because of the French. And then my last language was Arabic, so that was why I was in the Middle East, Syria, Palestine, and in Morocco. So basically, I love languages. I teach and I do translations as well. So, I love languages because it's a way to connect with people and to really get to know their culture and their history. And, it's something that I've taken with me to yin yoga. I teach in Spanish as well as in English. And I love it. I love the process of teaching because it's a process of it's interaction, it's learning together. We're always learning something, whether you're teaching a language or you're teaching yoga, you're always learning something. So that's what I love, the connection with people and the ongoing growing. Yeah.
Exactly. We have a lot in common.
Yeah.
I recognize a lot of myself in what you say. It's really amazing.
If I needed to speak it right now, I would say, French, Catalan, and Spanish, I would be comfortable with. My Arabic is rusty. I mean, my Arabic, I had intermediate level. I could read and write and speak it. I speak the dialect of Syria, but I had to learn Fusha, which is the traditional way that they teach. So yeah, I would say 3 additional languages I'm comfortable with, and I love them. It's great. Yeah. So the other ones are too rusty. I can't say, oh, I can speak Xhosa or I can speak. The other thing is that a lot of the languages that we learn when we're young, I don't know if you find that, but I find that they stay with you so much longer. When I hear someone speaking German or I look at a German menu, a lot of the things come back to me and you think, wow, that's incredible. How you can remember things from when you're so young. But when you try to learn languages later on in life, like Arabic, for me was just, oh my God, this is such a difficult language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that also is because you said you speak Afrikaans and you speak a lot of languages that are Latin based. They also have a lot in common, right?
Exactly.
So there's things that you recognize between them, and maybe not so much with Arabic.
I mean, an interesting fact about Arabic is that there are actually 10,000 words in Spanish that come from Arabic. Incredible. For example, alcalde, aceituna, zaytun. So
there's comparisons everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think also based, as you were saying before, when you learn one of the Latin-based languages, so Spanish or French, it helps you to understand Italian or Portuguese because you have that common base. And then I also find with the Afrikaans, it helped me with the German because there's quite a few words that are similar. Of course, German is more complex in terms of declinations, but sometimes I'm trying to find a word in Afrikaans and it comes to me in German. It's quite similar, and the sounds are quite similar as well. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So cool, really nice.
Yeah.
We're going to speak about yin. You said this translates into your yin practices as well. How do you apply your language learning in yin?
How do I apply my language learning in yin? I think it's really important to get into the skin of the student, right? So whether we are learning yin or whether we are learning a language, there are a lot of fears, right? So we have to start with the fears and we have to try to remember what it was like for us to learn that practice or that language. That's why I love teaching, both of them, because you need to take that step back. You need to be very compassionate and you need to be very supportive. There needs to be lots of staging, lots of cues, and follow up. And I think this is one of the things that's really difficult. I think it's perhaps easier when you're teaching a language, but much more difficult with yoga, because a lot of people are they're shy or they're embarrassed to say, I feel uncomfortable, I felt pain, and then they won't tell you, and then they just leave, right? So it's really important to provide that supportive network or that feeling that they can say to you, actually, Annchen, I did this pose and yesterday I felt a bit of pain, right? And so I can say to them, okay, right, you need to, the next time you do that, you have to be less aggressive. Why don't you try this alternative? And that's really important because otherwise, if you don't have that, you will just have people that will come to your class and they will leave and they won't come back and you won't know why. And I myself have noticed that with one of my teachers because I also do Ashtanga. So it's my other passion. I have a really good teacher, and on 2 occasions she pushed me too much, and I actually got slightly injured. But I told her, perhaps if I had been with another teacher, I wouldn't have told them. I would have just not gone back. And so I think that connection with the teacher is really important. And that's why for me, doing yoga with YouTube, it's nice if you want to get an idea of, a certain practice, but in the end, it can be injurious because you could try to copy what happens. And if you get injured, who are you going to speak to? Are you going to message that person on YouTube? Oh, by the way, I tried to do this and this is what happens. So yeah. I think for me, that's the most important, that there's a really strong connection between the student and the teacher. So the student can feel complete, well, not complete, but they can feel a sense of, safety and security and also interaction, because in Yin, when I teach Yin, I always provide 2 or 3 alternatives to the pose. So that basically people can explore to find the pose or should we say, the alternative of the pose that suits their body. And so when people come from, other types of yoga or other types of practices, they think they need to, copy me exactly. It's the alignment-based focus. And Yin is functionally based. And so it's basically, okay, here is the pose, here are some alternatives, you explore. And when students come in, they're quite worried, initially, because they're like, oh, what should I do? And they're not used to being given that option to do, to use their own bodies, to discover their own bodies,
Exactly.
But when they discover it, it's so empowering, because in the end, for me, yoga is about making the practice for you, not that you have to be continually dependent on a teacher. Eventually you can take that practice, you can do it yourself at home, and then eventually, of course, yoga is, to take it out into your life and to practice it in your life. So,
Exactly. Beautiful. I really like this.
Yeah.
And it's a great description of how we can use Yin to explore our own bodies and to understand ourselves better.
Yeah.
So from what I've seen around me and from the people that participate in my class, there's a lot of confusion around Yin. And even for myself, I had been practicing Yin for years, but only until I think it was my second teacher training, I started to realize there's so many benefits and so many things that we don't know about it. So could you explain to us what Yin actually is?
Okay.
And where this confusion comes from, maybe?
Let's see where I would start. Okay, so let me just start with a description. So it's a slow and a mindful practice. And I think what distinguishes it most from other types of yoga is that Yin focuses on, we use words like stressing and stretching connective tissue or fascia, right? So fascia, it's a type of framework, a type of web that connects so many parts of our body. It's found in our muscles, it's found in our ligaments, it's found in nerves, it's even found in blood vessels, and it connects our body together. It creates a sort of a support network or framework for our body. And what happens as we get older, for example, this network starts to become dehydrated and stiff and dry. So what we do with Yin is we actually nourishing that, we stimulating it, we actually change what they call the gel balance, so the water within the connective tissue. And so by doing this, we ensure that we maintain our range of motion. We can even increase the range of motion. We become, more flexible. Also, we become, of course, the most important thing, it's a focus on helping us to calm down as well. Because we are staying in these poses for between 2 and 5 minutes. And so when we are focusing on connective tissue, we're not actually focusing so much on the muscles, because when we are doing other types of physical activities, other types of yoga, then what we are doing is we are doing repetitive movements to basically stimulate the muscles, so the muscles are warm and the muscles are elastic. And so we can do those exercises. But when we're doing Yin, the Yin muscles, which are ligaments, joints, even bones, they are drier, they aren't as elastic, and so we need to stay for a time there, stressing them gently, so it becomes this yielding, nourishing, and healing practice, basically. That's how we describe it as a whole, but it's quite difficult to explain to people. In Yin, we are focusing on stretching this connective tissue, but this connective tissue is found everywhere. So people say, oh, but why are we stretching these muscles? Well, because inside the muscles, we have connective tissue. So 30% of our muscles is made up of connective tissue. By working in that area, especially in the joints, we are actually strengthening the joints. We are providing space so the joints are more stable and more mobile. For me, it's a fantastic complement to a very active practice, which is what I do. I do Ashtanga, which is very active, but I rarely need to have the yin as well. And this is what I would say to all the teachers that are watching you at the moment that are interested in yin. I would definitely promote yin as an option to include or to consider including, not just in your practice but also in teaching. Why? Because you can reach other niches, really. You can reach niches, for example, people who come to you and say the typical, oh, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible. Okay, that's most of my students. Most of my students, when they came to me, they'd never done yoga before. And once I convinced them and they tried it, they get hooked. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, excellent for office workers. Office workers who complain sore backs, sore shoulders, stiff. They feel stiff because all day they're in front of the computer. Together with that, feeling stressed. That for me it's a great niche. A lot of people are looking for, perhaps 15 minutes, half an hour. And with yin, you can give them just with a few poses, to get to that niche. So rather than just having your niche as, young people that are interested in, moving around a lot, you can actually expand your fan, should we say, abanico, your fan of fans, basically. So you have different niches as well. So that's why I would really recommend the teachers that are watching you that you can reach more of a niche. You don't have to just stay with, the young people that want to, learn how to improve their flexibility and mobility. Flexibility and mobility is not just about moving around a lot. It's also about staying in the poses. And it's also a way to get across to people that yoga is not just about doing exercises that look like you are going to the gym.
Exactly.
Yin for me really gives you this idea or promotes this idea of yoga. And yoga is, really being mindful and connecting with yourself and learning about yourself. Exactly. And that's probably what makes yin the most difficult, that part, because yin actually forces us to look inwards. And we are used to, when we go to do some activity, some physical activity, we want stimulation, we want the music, we want the teacher to be there telling us what to do all the time, want to be able to look at things. And then suddenly when we are in yin and we have to be focusing inwards, then that's scary. A lot of people don't want to be there. They say it's boring. They say, I can't be here. Some people just say, I can't do that. So they leave. It's too much. Of course, having said that, yin, like all yoga, we need to come to a practice that's right for you at that time. If someone had said to me when I started doing Ashtanga, try yin, I'll probably say, no, that's not for me. Yeah, so I think it's something that people should try and experiment with if they feel the interest. But, I think it's a great complement for any practice at any age, really.
Yeah. Exactly. I really recognize what you say, because I was one of those people that always wanted to be active and get into vinyasa flow with a lot of sweat. But as soon as I started practicing yin, it really transformed my way of thinking about yoga or practicing yoga as a whole, because it really, like you said, takes you inwards and it gives you the opportunity to reflect more and understand yourself and explore what you're capable of in the body, but also in your mind.
Exactly.
What would you say to the people that say it's boring or it's too slow or I can't do this, I need something that's more active?
Well, I would say to them that the yin yoga practice we need even more these days, especially because we are saturated with so much external stimulus. We watch television, we're on Facebook, we watching videos on Facebook, we are listening to music, and we have continual external stimulus. And a lot of that is because we don't actually want to be alone with our thoughts. And so I would say to them, actually, if you want to get to know yourself and your body, I would say the best way you can do that is actually with yin. Because when you are with yin, I always encourage my students to use it as an opportunity to explore their body, to listen to the sensations that they have. And yin is actually not a comfortable practice. It's not restorative. A lot of people think yin is restorative. It's not just restorative. We could have the feeling of being restorative afterwards, but it's not restorative. So basically, we are encouraged to stay in positions for 2 to 5 minutes. And what happens when we come into the positions, often we can find tension in parts of our bodies. And by staying there, we can actually discover, for example, maybe you'll find, okay, one shoulder is stiffer than the other one today. And we can find things out about our body that we wouldn't have found out in an active practice. And so I think that I would encourage people to give it a go, to find out how, if it has an effect on you. If it has an effect, if you find it interesting, then I would say go for it, explore more. I really think you can find out more about your body and about yourself doing yin than any other practice.
Exactly.
So yeah.
And
So,
are there any things that people should expect before they practice yin? I'm asking this because in my experience, one of the first time I burst out crying out of the blue. And it can be very overwhelming because sometimes you don't even know where it comes from.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is connected to what I was saying about the connective tissue. So if you can imagine, I'm sure it's happened to you before that somebody says something or you have an argument with someone and you feel that there's tension in your body, right? So what happens with yin, when we do a pose, as I said, we are stimulating and stretching the connective tissue. But what happens when we come out into something which is called the rebound pose. And when we are in the rebound pose, the connective tissue is, it's going back to its original position. There's a relaxation. And during that time, this is actually what happened to you. The tension comes out of our body in this rebound pose. And what happens is we can feel it as a pleasant sensation. It can be tingling. It can be energy. It feels fantastic. But sometimes it comes out as feeling vulnerable, as feeling sad. And sometimes that's because all that tension is coming out of you. And this is what's happened to some of my students as well. They're in this pose. It's a fantastic pose. They come to, the rebound pose, or even when they're in the pose and suddenly they start crying. It's basically the energy change, and literally your body is letting go of that tension, is letting go of that pain. And so, that's why I think it's such a healing practice.
Absolutely.
Especially, for example, I have quite a few students that are quite tense and nervous and anxious, and they always feel so much better afterwards because it's just, it's allowing you to get that out. But you don't need to get out the anxiety by running around. You can also do it in a slow, mindful way. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It really is. If you practice online, or maybe you've seen it in the studio as well. I'm saying practicing online because that's what a lot of people do these days, because we really can't leave. We see a lot of props. There's blocks and bolsters and straps. What do you really need for a yin practice?
Okay, so what I would recommend as being my top 2 would be 2 blocks and a bolster. Yeah. Of course you can have blankets, etc. But I would say to start off, I would say those are the 2 essentials. And, you could get them anywhere. The blocks you can get here in Grenada, €4 for the blocks. The bolsters are a little bit more expensive, but I would definitely recommend them, definitely. And the other thing with the supports is that a lot of people think, supports are for people who aren't so good. Yeah. But we use the supports not only to help us to get into the pose, but also to help us to get the most out of the pose. So sometimes to make the stretch even deeper. So I would definitely recommend at least having 2 blocks and a bolster if you're considering doing yin.
Nice. Good. That's really good information. And it's always confusing because sometimes they say you don't need anything. But I agree with you that they can be very beneficial to get the most out of the poses that you get in.
Yeah.
I've got one question, and I didn't actually ask you this before. And I think for me personally, when I first started, it was very confusing hearing different names for poses that I knew from my, let's say, young practices. Why are these names different?
Well, they're deliberately different, and it was because the person who's the modern sort of promoter of yin, Paul Briley, he gave them specifically English names, and the reason is to distinguish them from the Sanskrit names. Because when a person hears a Sanskrit name, they're going to try to apply, well, this is his explanation, they're going to try to apply the alignment cues to that pose. And in yin, it's not to do with which muscles you are going to activate. It's got to do with something which is called, the functional practice, as I mentioned before, which is the target area of that pose. So the focus is the target area of the pose. When we learn yin, we learn, okay, this is a pose, and this is the target area that we are trying to stretch. And so that's why they use the English names in order for the person to realize, okay, I'm doing a different practice. It looks similar, but it's not the same. I'm not going to apply the same cues as I do, a pose with Sanskrit name. So that's the reason why we do it. And initially, when people come to the practice, some of them try to apply the same way of practicing to yin as they do in a yang practice. And it's a process, to get to learn that what you're looking at is the target area, and you're not trying to apply what you have done in other types of practice. And sometimes people are too aggressive, which is dangerous because they are trying to do the same as they would do in a yang practice. So, normally we are in a pose for 5 breaths in a yang practice, but in yin it's for 5 minutes sometimes. And so you can't really, for example, do a pose where you're engaging those muscles for 5 minutes because, that would be exhausting. So, we really need to work on a type of education campaign when we do yin.
Exactly. So, and that's what you're on about, right? Speaking of which.
It's quite a challenge because, people come with, the first thing, of course, is I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. That's the most common. But then otherwise it's, I like my yang practice. I need to move around a lot. I don't need to do yin. So there's lots of education needed, but I'm passionate about it. So I'll continue the struggle. So to get out to everybody, that it's a really healing, and I think it's really important to keep the balance in our life. We have a lot of, external stimulus. We need time to recharge the batteries. We need to connect with ourselves. Don't be afraid to focus and to be with ourselves. So,
Exactly.
So,
Yes, I definitely recommend it too. It will change everything.
No, I think it's great. I think
life-changing practice.
Exactly.
Is there anything that you would like to add to this? Anything that I maybe have forgotten or you think is important to note?
Well, what I would say is with yin, if you're interested in yin, I would suggest that you, first of all, check out some YouTube videos just to see what you think. I have my own channel on YouTube, Yin Yoga Annchen. You can also, for example, look at someone like Cassandra. She also does a lot of yin yoga. If you're interested, maybe I would say try to find an online studio. I have an online studio. I've just launched one. Or you can look for other teachers that have online studios. So you have the opportunity to explore for yourself and just, maybe spend 2 or 3 months going through some of their classes.
Mhm.
And then when you feel, okay, I'm interested in this, then, sign up for teacher training. I think, like with everything, it's nice to learn first before you dive into teaching it. Just because you've done yoga doesn't mean automatically that it's going to be really easy to teach yin, because, as I said, it's a different mindset, really.
Mhm.
So I think it's nice to get yourself immersed in it before you go on to teach it. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
I agree. I've got a really nice book that showed me the differences. It's called, you must know it, it's The Language of Yin.
By whom?
I'm not entirely sure. I know the cover is blue. It's a really nice dreamy blue.
Okay.
I will send you a picture. I'm going to look at it
Okay.
later.
Right. Okay. Good.
And they explain it very nicely as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
where can people find you? You said you've got an online studio and you're launching a membership, if I'm right.
Yeah, I actually I launched the Yin Yoga for Beginners online studio on Monday. At the moment, I'm offering a 1 month free trial sort of membership. Basically, you have access to over 50 live videos, which I keep adding to. You have 3 live weekly classes. You also get free support from me as a coach. Or you have this wonderful engaged community. We have a weekly newsletter that the students contribute to. We have a monthly social event, a live social event, which is great because we live in lots of different countries. We have people from Australia, from America, from France, from Portugal, etc. And so it's great just to get together once a month and we chat together. And then I usually do a session about something related to yin. So it's an hour, it's fun, and people get a chance to connect. When we are learning, it's really important not to feel alone. And so that's why I think an online community or studio is great, because you feel that you can connect with the teacher, but you can also connect with other people and say, oh, I felt this when I did the pose, and someone else will say, oh, yes, me too. So when I do the Zoom classes, I can actually see the students, so I can provide them with, tips. If I see they're struggling or they're moving a lot in the poses, I can suggest, how they can adapt them so it's better for them, so they feel supported.
Exactly.
So, if you're interested in, joining the Yin Yoga for Beginners online studio, just send me a direct message and I will send you the coupon so you can get 1 month free trial. So,
and just to add to that, you also have a Facebook group, right?
Yeah, my Facebook group, Yin Yoga for Beginners. Yeah, it's all connected, all to do with beginners. Basically, because I've noticed that there's a lot of Yin Yoga teacher training, but there isn't so much for people that, they're just starting out with yoga or they're starting out with Yin Yoga. They don't want to do a teacher training, but they're curious and they want to start exploring. And so that's why I thought of the title Yin Yoga for Beginners. So just, slowly introducing it so people can explore. Yeah. And not everybody who wants to do Yin Yoga wants to be a teacher.
No.
Of all my students, I think there's, probably 2 that want to be teachers or perhaps are starting to teach, but most of my other students just do Yin because they love Yin. So, yeah.
Exactly. And it's always good to start from zero. Even if you have been practicing yoga for so long, like you mentioned, it's not really the same. The mindset is very different and the approach or teaching techniques are very different. So it's a great way to start from zero and re-educate yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Really nice. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure and I think very useful. I'm very happy that we finally cleared these doubts, all the confusion around Yin.
Yeah. And best of luck with all your projects as well.
Thank you.
And with all the teachers that are joining you, best of luck. And I hope to see you again sometime.
Absolutely.
Perhaps in real life, huh?
I know. We live so close. We should. We really should. Yes, we're
Okay.
gonna make it happen. Maybe hopefully in summer if the borders
Yeah,
open
that
again.
would be nice. Okay, great. Okay,
Thank you so much for joining. For
Thanks
those
a lot.
that have questions or would like any more information, check out Annchen's social media and the website for the membership. And if you have just questions, you can send us a DM as well.
Yeah. Okay, take care and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You listen to Your Yoga in English, brought to you by Enga Unite, a unique online learning platform for non-native English-speaking yogis and yoga teachers. If you feel inspired and liked what you learned today, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and follow us at Enga Unite and become a member of our online community, Your Yoga in English, on Facebook. Practice, rest, repeat, and all will come.